I don't think I want to talk to you, excuse me. I love you for your economic stuff, but I have a feeling, I think that you are very, very, very conservative socially. And I feel like I'll grow to hate you if we talk about your social conservatism too much. I'm sorry, excuse me. I have you stored in a happy space in my mind, and I don't want to ruin that. God damn it.
Damn, dude. Automatically assuming what do you think I'm in favor of this even after I coach you on pro-immigration policies? You think
I've watched you type in chat, and you're very much against calling this a Muslim ban.
Oh, so you're saying that it's possible to be against the policy, but at the same time be against the notion of identifying it as a Muslim ban?
No, it's definitely possible, but I don't see how you could possibly say that it's not an attempt to ban Muslims.
Sure. Okay. So, well, I mean, that's an interesting wordplay there. You change it from a Muslim ban to an attempt to ban Muslims. That would be kind of like if I said the Cuban embargo was a Hispanic ban. Because, hey, the Cuban embargo is aimed at Hispanics, right? It's trying to keep Hispanic trade out of our country. So,
God bless you,
the Cuban embargo is just basically a hashtag Hispanic ban.
Okay, so when people talk about, when people say Muslim ban, do you think that people mean the banning of all Muslims coming from America?
When I think of Muslim ban, what I think people should mean when they say that is that Muslims are banned from traveling to America. That's what a Muslim ban means, and that's what it ought to mean.
This is just a semantics argument.
Okay, I don't think it's semantics argument at all.
Well, when somebody targets 7 Muslim majority countries, has said multiple times in the past that he wants to ban Muslims from coming into the country, and then says he wants to give preferential treatment to Christians, it looks kind of like you're going after Muslims with that. That's cool.
So let's start from the beginning then. Explain to me in clear and factual terms, not your opinion of it, what the executive order does. Like, what does the executive order do?
I believe, from what I've read, it seems like the executive order's goal is to, for 120 days, it makes it so that if you are a refugee, we stop the refugee registration process for 120 days, and then for 90 days, if you have citizenship in any of the 7 identified countries, you are not permitted to travel to the United States, regardless if you're a green card or visa holder. If you are a green card or visa holder, it seems like you could work something out on a case-by-case basis. That's what it seemed to me. Am I missing something?
So no, you're not missing a thing, and that's actually the problem I have, is that I'm against that policy as well. But when you choose to throw the gauntlet down and hold your ground on the idea that it's a Muslim ban, you're isolating a lot of people who would otherwise be against it, but they're not going to follow this notion that it's some Muslim ban or like the worst thing this country has ever done or in our lifetime. And when you kind of do that kind of extremism, I think there are a lot of, even that last caller, he wasn't so sure of it. But if you have these people kind of like losing their minds on the left and calling it a Muslim ban, when it's obviously not a Muslim ban in any way of the term you would actually mean it, then like I don't understand why you would harp on that. Why can't you kind of just concede that it's not a Muslim ban, or at the very least don't try to make it about that?
Because for me, I'm not the one that made it about that, dog. I actually, because I spent so much of my early life being a fucking libertarian, okay? I spent all my time circle jerking and masturbating over the fucking U.S. Constitution. Even though I'm a left-leaning SJW libtard now, American values and American principles and things that are intrinsic to our nation are still ideals that I hold very, very, very highly. The idea of restricting access to our country based on your religion is like one of the worst, least American things I could ever possibly conceive of doing. Like literally one of the worst things I've ever heard of in my entire life, like in being alive. I think it's that bad.
The fact it means so much to you, it shows why you're doing such a huge disservice by derailing the conversation about it.
It's not derailing. No. It's the opposite. I'm getting sick. No, dude. I'm getting tired of the like, well, it's not really this bad. It's like, at what point? Like, does Trump literally have to get on and say, no more brown people? And you're like, well, when he said brown people, brown is actually a term of economic disparagement. And what he's actually saying is we want high school. Like, this is what we're going to. Trump is on record in no uncertain words saying, I want to restrict Muslims from coming to America. He went to Giuliani. Giuliani is on the record in no uncertain words saying Trump wants to ban Muslims coming from the country. Trump said in no uncertain words, I will give preference to Christians. You cannot keep saying that it is not about religion. You're not allowed to say that anymore. Trump does not mince words.
Look, you just explained to me what the executive order entailed, and it entailed the temporary
ban on travel. The context
of
everything going on is important. These things are all contextualized. The Constitution says a right of all people or whatever bullshit, and it obviously didn't apply to Negroes or women, so the context is important.
All that matters in determining whether or not the executive order is a ban on Muslims is assessing the actual policy of the executive order. And if you argue against that, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you are driving away people who disagree with the executive order. But I'm not going to buy into this propaganda, because it's just not true. And if you tell me that Muslims are banned from traveling to the U.S. or that it's a Muslim ban, I'm not going to believe you, even though I am against the executive order. So I don't understand why, if it's so important to you, you're so willing to drive a wedge from people who would otherwise be inclined to be persuaded by your point of view. But instead, you make it about this. And even your last caller, a lot of the portion of the call was determined about the idea of whether or not it's a Muslim ban. I don't understand why you want that to be the battleground.
Because I don't like to see American values eroded and destroyed, and I don't like this false equivalency. It's like when you get two people on, and one wants to argue in favor of the process of evolution, and the other one wants to argue in favor of the process of creationism, and you say you must give both of these guys equal respect. Both of them had valid ideas, and both of them need to be treated equally. That's fucking bullshit. And I don't like that idea that we have to let somebody erode the most important things to our country as Americans under the guise of, well, if you look at the actual exact text in the legislation, like, even though Trump has been recorded fucking 50 plus times through it all, probably 150 plus times saying this religiously charged shit, we have to pretend that this has nothing to do with religion? That sounds like fantasy land to me.
See, and this is the problem. You're saying pretend it has nothing to do with religion? No, we could have a very rich conversation about what it has to do with religion. But you preclude all of that by just calling it a Muslim ban when it's not. That's what I really don't understand. There's a lot of complexity. There's a lot of discussion to go on underneath this. But by throwing the gauntlet down on the idea that it's a Muslim ban when it's clearly not, that's why
Why do you say it's clearly not?
It's clearly not, because Muslims aren't banned from entering the U.S. Muslims aren't banned, so it's not a Muslim ban. It's
okay, so if he banned every single Muslim country in the world except for one, it's not a Muslim ban because some Muslims are allowed to come into the United States?
I mean, every single country except for one?
Like, where do you draw the line on that? See, he picked seven Muslim-majority countries and said he would give preferential treatment to Christians. None of these Muslim countries have been involved in terror attacks. It doesn't seem like there's any real reason to ban travel from these countries, other than the fact that they're Muslim-majority countries that aren't our allies.
Well, he didn't just ban Muslims; he banned all citizens. So that's
in Muslim-majority countries, and said he would give preferential treatment to Christians.
Oh, he said in the refugee program they would review removing persecuted minorities from those areas, which is a priority of.
He said Christian. He used the word Christians. I can find the exact quote if you don't believe me. If you haven't seen it, he specifically said Christians.
Yeah, I think he gave Christians as an example of a persecuted minority. And last I checked, getting persecuted minorities as refugees, accepted as refugees, is a top priority of basically every refugee program in history. I think Christians are about 10% of Syrians. So the idea that we should prioritize persecuted minorities, it's not crazy. It's worth discussion. But reframing this whole thing, repackaging it as a Muslim ban, that's where you drop all the nuance and you derail it, because this conversation becomes about that. And again, it would be like the Cuban embargo. If you try to tell me the Cuban embargo was a Hispanic embargo, because every single Cuban's Hispanic, and then I said, well, it's obviously not a Hispanic embargo. It's an embargo because Cuba is communist. You said, well, no. Well, how many Hispanic countries would have to be banned for you to admit that it's a Hispanic ban? And that's the problem, is that when you
I don't like the comparison of the situation, because I don't know the climate behind it. Is the person that enacted this ban on record multiple times saying that he wanted to embargo trade with Hispanic people? Yes or no?
He's on record as saying he wants to make sure that
Hispanic people, communists are not Hispanic people. So no, so it's not the same. You're drawing a false equivalency. Does he say multiple times, I want to embargo trade against Hispanic people, yes or no? Because Trump has said Muslim people multiple times, hundreds of times.
Can we agree or disagree with this? And you should concede to this, because it's true. The law of the executive order is entirely independent of anything Trump has said.
Absolutely disagree. I couldn't disagree with that harder. I can't even imagine a statement I could disagree with more, actually.
It's totally wrong. It's a matter of law. It's not a matter of of what's been said in the past, and that's empirical. That's not based off your
But
opinion.
That's not true. The government doesn't function like that. No, that's
Yes,
not
it
true.
does.
Because parts of the EO have already been
exactly
overturned. We've already overturned the part about green card people not being let in. The Attorney General herself has said that it is an illegal action that she couldn't defend in a federal court.
No,
so
you're wrong about. Yep, you're wrong.
She
about
literally
that,
said they
man.
wouldn't defend it. She said they would not defend it because she didn't think it was.
wrong.
Okay, let me find the Attorney
Here's
General's
what she
statement.
said.
Okay.
I'll tell you what she said. She said she wasn't convinced of its legality. It's totally different than saying that it's illegal. It's not true. So when you say that she said it was illegal,
Okay, she didn't say it was legal. She said that she didn't believe it was legal. Otherwise, they would provide it.
No, she didn't say that. She said she wasn't.
Oh, dude, this is like the hardest concern trolling I've ever heard in my entire life, dude. I can't, dude. This is the hardest concern trolling I've ever heard in my entire life. I don't think I've seen any SJWs do it this hard.
So explain to me how it's concern trolling then.
You're trying to hardcore ignore all of the context and meaning of everything going through here. Like, well, if you read just these exact words and ignore the greater context of everything going around, you don't believe that the North Carolina voter ID laws targeted black people then?
I don't know enough about the North Carolina ID laws, but
okay.
All that matters is the law. Does the law ban all Muslims from travel, or ban even the vast majority, even more than 15%, not even close. So calling it a Muslim ban is the entire problem. That's what, and again, I'm against it too, and I can lay out reasons why I'm against it. But all of the reasons I'm against it, and all the reasons I think people should be against it, are obfuscated by holding the line on the idea that it's some Muslim ban when it's not. And I think it is
a Muslim ban, and I think that's the most important reason to be against it.
If you think that, then you're putting people like me and others who don't agree with the law, but you're putting us on that side, and that's you and others like you who are against it, and you refuse to concede any ground on that. You're so convinced of that, and you're driving people away. People like me. I'm going to argue against you. You're putting me on their side because you're trying to tell me it's a Muslim ban when it's clearly not. That's the entire problem with it. If I don't swallow that propaganda, then I'm on their side, even though I disagree with the policy. And that's not the grounds that I created. That's the grounds that was created by the left and their narrative against this.
Think about it in isolation.
Okay, well, I'm going to continue to go ahead and follow what the President of the United States said, the guy that was in charge of drafting the executive order, rather than pretending that there is some letter of the law that isn't open to interpretation. All right, I'm gonna continue on that path. If you want to pretend that law exists in some vacuum, which it absolutely doesn't, I don't think anybody that's in law would ever make that argument. That's an absurdly ignorant argument to make, right? You understand that, right? That all law is open to interpretation, right?
So the law is open. Yeah, see, the law is open to interpretation, but it's open to interpretation of the actual subject in the text of the law. It's not open to interpretation of what does this law actually do. I asked you what you did, and you explained to me what we did, what it did. And what it did is totally independent of anything Trump said in the past. What you explained to me what it did. When I asked you earlier, and
I mean,
under
what you're saying, then, under what you're saying, I could collect racial data about black people before they go to the polls, find out all of the common types of ID they use, find out when they go to the polls commonly, and then I could enact legislation that closes the polls on certain days and restricts certain types of ID that they use. But since it doesn't target black people, it's not actually a racially targeted, restriction of voting rights, is what you would say, right?
Sorry, that was a pretty convoluted analogy. You're saying if you only
let's say that I work for the polling people. Let's say that I collect a bunch of data about black people and I find out when they go to the polls. I find out what types of ID they use. Right? Let's say that I make laws saying that you can't use those IDs anymore, and that I wouldn't have the polling places open when black people are most likely to go. Now, since this doesn't target black people, it doesn't say no black people allowed. You would say that these aren't racial laws because the letter of the law doesn't mention black people anywhere.
So the justification for that policy is research into what polls black people are using, correct? Isn't that the kind of what's used to motivate the decision of the polling places? Is the research on it?
Okay, but it's not in the letter of the law.
But that's what went into the research, and that's
who cares? But it's not in the letter of the law. Now you're telling me research matters? What if Trump did research and said these were Muslim countries and I wanted them banned?
Let me finish my point. It does matter. And here's the parallel. The parallel is that these countries that Trump chose were specifically identified by the Obama administration as harboring terrorism. So it's not.
But it didn't have anything to do with a travel ban. I'm sorry. Was the Obama administration trying to restrict travel from all 7 of these countries?
My point is that these countries were chosen because they are terrorist hotbeds. not because in your analogy they were chosen because black people voted
okay,
there.
But that doesn't. Iraq is a
basis to use to determine which polling places to do. But using that list of terrorist countries isn't a bad basis to use for countries that should be.
How do you know? You don't know what the intel is about it. You don't know if these places are at risk of sending immigrants to us.
I know what the law is. It's law that these countries have been recognized as quote unquote problem countries.
Okay, but Saudi Arabia hasn't.
Oh, I mean, and again, we're coming into territory where I agree that there is some there are some things that aren't perfect about like what needs to be looked at closer, and Saudi Arabia is one of them. But that's the entire problem I have, is that when you make the issue about whether or not it's a Muslim ban, it's like you're just making the battle about that and not about the actual nuances that are actually important.
I don't know. I don't agree. I don't like to get lost in the concern trolling. Giuliani himself was literally on the news, and he said that Trump came to him looking for a legal way to do a Muslim ban, and he found the legal way to do it. And now, since it doesn't say Muslim ban in the letter of the law, you're saying it's not a Muslim ban. That's what you're saying.
I'm not saying that it's not a Muslim ban because it doesn't say a Muslim ban. I'm saying it's not a Muslim ban because it doesn't ban fucking Muslims from traveling to the country.
It bans 7 majority Muslim countries from traveling here for seemingly no reason.
So what percentage of the Muslim world is that then?
It doesn't matter. Well, if I walk into a school and I'm looking to kill black people and I shoot and kill 5 people and there's 1,000 black people there, I wouldn't say like it wasn't racist because I only targeted 5 out of 1,000 black people, so it wasn't enough to actually be considered black people killing. That doesn't make any sense.
Let's rehash this then. You're saying it's a Muslim ban, but the proportion of Muslims that are banned doesn't matter. I refuse to.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what is the point of the ban? Are you targeting Muslims? That's what makes it a Muslim ban. Not targeting all Muslims, but targeting Muslims. If we banned immigration from Chad because we didn't want black people here, it doesn't matter.
By that same logic, the Cuban embargo is a Hispanic ban. Hispanic ban.
Is the person that did the Cuban embargo? Is the person that did the Cuban embargo on record saying that he wanted to embargo trade with Hispanics?
Hey, look. The law targets Hispanics. The Cuban embargo law, every single person is Hispanic in the Cuban embargo. So it has to be a Hispanic ban. It doesn't matter the proportion of Hispanics that are actually affected, because that doesn't matter. We can call it Hispanic ban even though one tiny country in Latin America
this boggles my mind because this is similar in economics too, where you can't just pull out a single stat. You have to look at things holistically. But you want to look at this law at literally the exact... No, you don't want to look at things holistically. You're saying that the fact that Trump specifically said he wanted to ban Muslims is irrelevant. The fact that Giuliani said Trump was looking to ban Muslims is irrelevant. The fact that both of them referred to this as a ban is irrelevant. The fact but none of that matters. All that matters is the exact 100% letter of the law wording.
Well, the policy is all that matters, and that's 100% true. The policy is all that matters. And if you can't explain to me how the policy bans Muslims or is a Muslim ban, because the policy does ban Muslims, but it's not a Muslim ban. Just like the Cuban embargo is an embargo against Hispanics, but it's not a Hispanic ban.
Let me see how you do this. Do you think that it is a Muslim targeted ban?
I would say it's a terrorist targeted ban, and terrorists in the Middle East are Muslims.
Why haven't we gotten terrorists from any of these countries coming over, except for the one guy from Somalia? Where are the Iranian terrorists?
From Somalia. Hey, and look, we're starting to get more into intersection also. Again, I said I don't support it, and one of the reasons I don't support it is because of the low incidence of terrorism. I don't think
if it's a low incidence of terrorism, then how is it a terrorist targeted ban?
Because that's what the State Department themselves.
That's what they said?
Yes, are you kidding me?
And that's what you agree with? They said that, and so you just take them at their word for it, and you ignore everything else? Well, if that's what they said, then...
I acknowledge that there's large amounts of terrorism in those countries. I acknowledge that a lot of those terrorists are trying to pose as refugees. You can't deny that ISIS is devastating those countries. So recognizing those countries...
ISIS is devastating Iran? What?
No, exactly, and that's another area where, no, it's not devastating Iran, but still Iran is still a state sponsor of terrorism.
So is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, none of them are on the list, and they're all the biggest sponsors of ISIS. And fucking 15 of the hijackers came from Saudi Arabia for 9/11. How can you say that these guys don't sponsor terrorism? I guarantee you that the Sunni states sponsor way the fuck more than the Shia ones do, but Syria, Iran, and Iraq are all on the fucking banned trouble list. So how is it about terrorism?
Well, how is it about Muslims then? If those countries aren't banned, but these are,
because they're our allies. I don't know, but they seem.
and thus is the entire problem. There is real grounds to argue against it, but you haven't been talking about that as much because you've been arguing about whether or not it's actually a Muslim ban.
Because Trump's entire administration seems to be about making this a fucking holy war, and it needs to not be that. That's been the whole right narrative. That's why they keep saying we need to call this an Islamic extremism, because they want to make it a fucking holy war of Christians versus Muslims, and that's not what this is supposed to be about.
I think if you make that the dichotomy, either it's a holy war, and either you agree that it's a Muslim ban when it's not, or else you're on this side of this holy war. Like that's just such extremist ideology. When there's ample
that's what America works as. That's like saying that when a cop comes by, so even if you look really guilty, the cop shouldn't be able to search your car without a warrant. Wow, dude, that's pretty extremist. Yeah, these are extreme ideas. That's what our country was founded on. They are very extreme ideas. I don't disagree with that. The ability for our government to not segregate or discriminate against people based on their religion, that is an extreme idea, but that is one that I support. There is no middle ground there. There is no give and take in this idea. If you start discriminating on people based on their religion, then you've gone over the cliff. There's not a little give and take there.
Hey, it's all the more reason to be more prudent about how you argue and what you decide to use as a basis for your argument. And like you can kind of sigh, but many people are uncertain about this.
I'm not uncertain, man. When Trump has said multiple, I don't say that, dude. Trump said it. Trump said that he wants to ban Muslims. Trump said that he wants to ban Muslims. I'm not making it up. I'm not extrapolating based on things that he said. These are Trump's own words.
Trump said that his executive order is not a Muslim ban, and it's not a Muslim ban. And even if Trump did say it was a Muslim ban, it still wouldn't be a Muslim ban because the policy is not a Muslim ban. That's all there is to it. But so if you choose this idea of a hashtag Muslim ban as being the hill you're going to die on and the wedge you're going to decide, the gauntlet, the line in the sand you're going to draw, then you're doing yourself a discredit. And I think the issue is very important, like you said. So if you make it about that, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice, and everybody else who's against it as well. And that's basically my piece. Because like I said, I'm against it as well for the reasons you are. But it boggles my mind that and I think you acknowledge this a lot. In the past you have, how you hate how people are so extreme because you feel like it drives people to the extremes.
To some extent, yes, but the problem is for me personally, and again, I'll credit it to the years of my life I spent wandering around as a libertarian. I very strongly believe in certain American values and American principles. I don't have any sense of fucking culture or whatever patriotism bullshit, but in terms of founding American principles, I feel very, very strongly, and these are hills that I will die on. When somebody is on record saying multiple times that they want to find a way to ban Muslims from the country, when he goes to a guy that helps him draft the EO, and that guy says he was trying to find a legal way to do a Muslim ban, this is a hill I will gladly die on, because it is the most un-American thing I could ever possibly conceive of. And I think it's more important than any other argument, whether it's not targeting the right countries or blah, blah, blah. It's the fact that you have a president in office who has been on record hundreds of times saying he wants to ban Muslims, enacting an executive order targeting 7 arbitrary countries that all happen to be Muslim-majority countries. Yeah, that's an extreme position that I'll take.
So you think it's actually arbitrary?
To some extent, yeah, it seems to be that way.
To some extent, it's arbitrary, but it's not really arbitrary.
I mean, it seems to be to me, unless some big report comes out about how, these are the countries that, are all going to send immigrants to our place to fuck us up or whatever. It seems arbitrary. I don't know.
If it were arbitrary, then it would be actually random, and you could just choose some countries at large, and they wouldn't have any correlation to U.S. policy recognizing those countries as dangerous.
Well, they have correlate. Okay, it's not arbitrary. There's spooky Muslim countries that we're not allied with. How about that?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. And that's a fair assessment, and that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Spooky Muslim countries. So we're targeting Muslim countries. Muslims target Muslims. Muslim ban.
No, I'm saying that you first said we chose those countries arbitrarily when we obviously did not choose them.
I'm sorry, arbitrarily when you talk about in terms of like danger to the country or a terrorist threat to the country. For the claims that they gave, the country seemed to be somewhat arbitrary because they said it was a ban on terrorists. It seems to be arbitrary that they would pick those 7 countries then. But in terms of...
But you explained it yourself, is that they're countries that were recognized as dangerous and they're not allies. So those two
recognized as dangerous by the Obama administration, by internal CIA people. I don't know what that means by recognized as dangerous. That doesn't mean that he was going to enact a travel ban. It doesn't mean that they were a threat of sending immigrants. Maybe these were just unstable places. I don't know what that meant.
So you're missing my point. My point is you started with these countries were arbitrarily chosen. And now where we're at is these countries were
recognized as oh my God, stop, dude. You're trying to nail me to the wall on semantics when you should know exactly what I mean. They were not chosen arbitrarily. They were chosen because they were Muslim-majority countries countries that we are not allied with. That's why they were chosen, okay? When I say they were arbitrarily chosen, what I mean is, he said, these are countries that we chose to ban because of terrorist reasons. Okay, well, these are some pretty fucking arbitrarily picked countries then. That's what I mean. Don't try to nail me on the semantics there. You should know exactly what I mean when I say arbitrarily chosen.
But the fact that they were all on that exact same list, it's not
on what list? Is Saudi Arabia not on this list? Or is
I'm not sure if Saudi Arabia. It's a good question, but the thing is, the reason why Saudi Arabia wasn't is because they were allied with us, and I disagree with that. But my entire point is that it wasn't arbitrary. It was very intentional. And that's the only point I wanted to make with that.
Yeah, it is intentional. They're Muslim majority countries that we aren't allied with. That's why I call it a Muslim targeted ban.
Right. Well, you said the countries were arbitrarily chosen, and they weren't arbitrarily chosen. But anyway, yeah, man, I don't know. Like, I just dislike that there's this really false dichotomy where it's like if you are against the policy, you have to swallow the propaganda that it's a Muslim ban. And
I mean, you don't necessarily have to swallow the propaganda that it's a Muslim ban, I guess, if you don't think it is. But I mean, with all the context going around,
it's not a matter of what I think. It just isn't. That's the thing. So
okay. And McCarthyism was about keeping our country safe from communism. There was no any kind of context or anything going around about that. Or intern camps were just about keeping our country safe. There was no racial element or anything to that. Or
like, I'm not sure.
I don't understand how you can ignore the context of everything going on.
But here's the problem. I'm not denying that there's an Islamic element to the ban. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it's not a Muslim ban. That's an actual. When you say it's a Muslim ban, it has a specific meaning. When you actually ban a Muslim, like, that means something. It doesn't simply mean that Islam is related to the policy. It doesn't even mean that the policy is racist. It means something very specific. And that's the entire problem I have, is that just because it's racist, just because it's anti-Muslim or Islamophobic or what have you, it's not a Muslim ban. And if you try to tell me it's a Muslim ban, I'm not going to believe you. And a lot of people, it's not just me, plenty of people aren't going to believe that. So if you choose for that to be the aperture of the argument against it, is that it's a Muslim ban when it's not, then you're doing discredit to the actual underlying.
I'll do discredit to whatever argument you want to make, but I'll continue to make that argument. I can't ignore the context of everything going around. I guess. I can't.
Well, I think by doing that, you drive people to the other side. I think
So I drive people to these are people that I never wanted as allies anyway, dude. I don't want somebody that's retarded enough to go and say, like, well, maybe this was a good idea because he's saying it's a Muslim ban. Like, these are people that were too fucking stupid to ever engage in discourse anyway. Like, it's fucking retarded.
There are plenty of people who aren't exactly sure, but
aren't sure of what.
But they're in between on the policy. There are plenty of people who are undecided on the policy.
What are you undecided on? How could you be? What is the argument in favor of the policy?
What are you talking about? Me? No, plenty of voters are undecided. Not me.
No. What are you? When I don't mean you in particular. I mean, like, what could you be undecisive about? Not you particularly, but what could a person be up in the air about?
So, regardless of what they're up in the air about, I think a lot of those people aren't going to be convinced by the notion that it's a Muslim ban, because it's not a Muslim ban. That's my only point, is that if these voters are in between and uncertain, and you have one side trying to tell them it's a Muslim ban, when if they look at the policy and they look at the facts, it obviously isn't, then you're driving them to...
With all these countries that are like 97% plus Muslim.
Yeah, when 90% of the Muslim world is still allowed, and it's a temporary hold.
Temporary for now. It's 90 days for now, assuming that they meet the vague guidelines listed out in the executive order of making travel safer, or vetting better, or whatever. Maybe it'll be 90 days. Maybe it'll be extended to 4 years. Who knows?
Right. So a temporary hold from 7 countries that have been identified as problems in the past.
But have never sent terrorists apparently to our country. But.
So yeah, exactly. So calling that a Muslim ban it's just wrong. But anyway, obviously, if you really want to kind of keep that as like the basis of the argument, then I guess I think it's unfortunate, and I think it's a large part of the reason we're actually in this problem now, personally, because the actual substance of the discussion is totally lost.
I think but I guess that's where we disagree. But I don't know how big you are on like the constitutionalism and shit. But for me, that is the basis of the discussion is banning people into entering the United States based on religious ground, because that's what's going on.
I'm a very constitutionalist.
Okay, well, that's what's going on behind the scenes, not the letter of the law. Like, that's what is going on behind the scenes, is an exclusion of Muslims from the country.
So you actually think this executive order is a violation of the First Amendment?
Yeah, I think that we're heading in that direction. Sure, I don't.
No, not heading. I want. You actually think the executive order is a violation of the First? I don't think it is. I'm against it. I'm very.
That'll be for the courts to decide, I guess, depending on how that gets challenged in the courts. I guess I think the ACLU was going under that context. They were treating it as a Muslim ban, I think is what the ACLU lawyers were saying. I guess the courts will decide it, but.
Sure, I'm against it, but I don't think it's a violation of the First Amendment.
Gotcha. I mean, all the voter ID things in North Carolina, none of those quote unquote targeted black people, but that was still considered to be all racially motivated. So I mean.
Well, I think the problem is that there's probably more empirical evidence behind the terrorism that's embedded in Syria and Somalia and Iraq.
All those immigrants that come over from Iraq and commit terrorist attacks, or from Iran, or from Sudan, or from.
That's part of the reason I oppose it, and that should be the real substance of the debate, not the false notion that it's a Muslim ban. It should be about that.
All right. Well, listen, I love you, dude. I still love you.
All right, man.
I'm always gonna love you. Okay.
All right. Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me vent.
Have fun. I'll see you later, buddy.
Bye.